We've really been tilapia farmers for some 25 years. In the last couple of years, we started getting into aquaponics as a way to recirculate our water and get rid of the excess nitrogen that was accumulating in the system. So I built my first prototype right here as essentially a standalone system to learn what parts of the system would work, or more accurately, what didn't work. In this particular system, we've had a number of glitches over the years, at least over the months, and there are times when the thing does shut off. And in the case of tilapia, if you have a system that shuts down for several hours, you come back to a bunch of dead fish and then start all over again, much like aquaculture. The catfish will just go to the bottom of the tank and lay there until everything turns back on again. That's really why I put the catfish in my prototype, because I knew there would be a lot of problems with it. So I used the nutrients from the fish to provide culture water to 3 different kinds of systems. Classic method is just a raft culture, where you have essentially water in a big tank and the plants are floating out on a raft in the medium. You provide culture water to the edge of the raft or somewhere into this lake, and then the plants collect their nutrients up from underneath. The problem with this particular part of in my opinion, is you need a large tank of water, and it tends to get rather anoxic on the bottom. It's hard to keep the circulation really good in a large pan like this. There are some people who have been very successful with it, but it takes fairly high flow rates in order to keep the plants happy, to keep the roots well oxygenated. Me personally, I wanted something that would work on a much lower flow rate. Here's a perfect example of what happens when bell siphon goes wrong. I don't like bell siphons for this very reason, because sometimes they work extremely well and other times they will fail you when you least expect it. So what I do is I develop my own siphon, which is this toggle siphon you see in the foreground. The advantage of this particular kind of siphon is it has a much larger range of flows over which it works very effectively. Bell siphons do not. They only work over a very narrow flow regime do they work effectively or well. If the water flow becomes too high or too low, they tend to fail. This one is designed such that it will fire on virtually any flow rate. The weight inside the siphon itself overcomes the weight on the counterweight. The whole thing will trigger itself, and once it drops into position, the entire tank volume you see behind it will drain out. Once the tank is drained dry, the center canister on the siphon dries out, and then the toggle will trigger back again and reset. From the upper header tank here, the primary cinder bed, which is providing the water for the rest of the system, it drains out through this black manifold as you saw earlier. Now this manifold is providing water in several different ways to the system. And one way you can see is directly to the plants that I've got actually growing in these variety of grow ports in the top of the manifold. Right now it's not fully loaded. The system is actually fairly young. I have yet to place a lot of plants in here, but this allows you to actually see the water flowing and how the system is designed and built. Now underneath this black pipe, it's also supplying water through a series of these small spray bars into the cinder beds below. Now this cinder bed does not have a bell siphon, it's just a drain right through based on the pulses of the water that come from the header tank every few minutes. This particular cinder bed is planted with tomatoes. The idea is that the tomatoes don't work as well in the grow ports. These are a climbing plant that I'm going to be weaving through the trellis. So as the tomatoes becoming more and more mature, they're going to take off and move up and over the trellises. Another plant that grows very well in the cinder beds is taro. Taro loves the cinder beds. They tend to explode out of it. It allows the plant a substrate to hang on to that it wouldn't get in some of these nutrient pipes, where you would tend to have the long balls of roots that can dangle on the pipes. The taro has this large corm, or a fist-sized tuber that actually grows under the surface that needs something to hang on to. And the substrate in this case is really just regular cinders. The water, as it passes through the taro beds, drains back to my sump tank via a 4-inch pipe that you see at your feet. Again, this will be stocked with a variety of the leafy greens. That'll be where my smaller plants are, the ones with the very undeveloped root systems. Will start out in the white pipes on the bottom, and then as they get larger and larger, I'll move them up to the black pipes, the black distribution pipes in the background, probably 2 or 3 weeks prior to harvest. As we follow the water down through the system, it ultimately comes together at this low white manifold. The fish, which are ultimately my nutrient suppliers, are actually hiding underneath this blanket. They're the ones that convert the protein in the food that I give them to the nitrate, which ultimately is feeding the plants. At the very bottom of my system, you see this small fist-sized pump down here. It's an extremely effective pump because it's in magnetic drive. The mag drive pumps, from my experience, are extremely reliable. I could have run them for as many as 5 years continuously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Very, very reliable pumps. This pump runs on 120 volts, and that 120 volts is ultimately supplied by these 4 photovoltaic panels you see in the foreground. The pump that's driving this whole system comes from a small 24-volt inverter. That 24-volt inverter draws this power from this battery bank here you see in the background. These are designed to take power very quickly. The photovoltaic panels are only producing power effectively for 5, maybe 6 hours a day. These batteries have to be able to pull all the power that they need for 24 hours of operation in those 5 to 6 hours of charging. What delivers that charge is a small standard charge controller. These are commercially available. This basically regulates the power that's coming from the photovoltaic panels to make sure that it doesn't overcharge batteries, which are supplying the voltage for the pump, which makes the whole works go. And that's pretty much it. It's a standalone system. It's been up and running for several weeks. Unfortunately, I haven't had the plants in it for more than a limited amount of time. You're here kind of at the birth of this system. As I run this thing for the next few weeks, I continue to iron the bugs out and get it all balanced such that in the future I should be able to produce 5 or 6 heads of lettuce a day using just the power of the sunlight and a couple of handfuls of fish feed.